and what a week it was. So Daniel Cormier and Anthony Johnson fought at UFC 210, where Daniel Cormier came out the victor. And in a sense, it was a little surprising for me. I suspected that Anthony Johnson, with his immense power, if you can say God-given knockout power, whether you believe in God or not, he has that. He possesses that. And not a lot of fighters do. And I thought that would trouble Daniel Cormier a lot. And it did. He may have a broken nose from that fight. So that just tells you about the immense power Anthony Johnson possesses. But like the first fight between them, Daniel Cormier found a way to win. And that's the hallmark of a champion, where you're faced with a difficult opponent, but you find a way, make adjustments. And an interesting strategy that Johnson implemented, which worked against him clearly, was wrestling Daniel Cormier. Even though he took Cormier down in the first round, he looked much more dangerous standing up against Daniel Cormier because of his immense power. And unfortunately, we didn't really see that. Nerves can play a factor. But you even heard some of his coaches like Henry saying to keep it standing. Don't go and wrestle an Olympic wrestler. And when you fight someone at their own game, it's very hard to win unless the strategies are on point. And I think the strategies were on point, but I don't think Johnson quite executed what was planned. And that can happen. That's a credit to Daniel Cormier for engaging in the wrestling, tiring Johnson out a little bit and getting his back on the ground and choking him out via a rear naked choke. Johnson didn't lose consciousness, but he was forced to tap out. And it was very similar to the first fight in the way it kind of unfolded. So Einstein once said, you can do things over and over again, but if you expect a different result from doing it over and over again, you're crazy in that sentiment. And in a way, this applies to the second fight between Daniel Cormier and Anthony Johnson, because there was wrestling like there was in the first fight. If Johnson was to win this, it needed to be a stand-up fight. It couldn't go to wrestling, even though Johnson has a background himself. But he's versing an Olympic wrestler in Daniel Cormier. So Cormier even had some good knees he inflicted upon Anthony Johnson in the clinch. And probably a real surprise, rather than the outcome of the fight, is the fact that Anthony Johnson said this was his last fight. So this is surprising. He is in the prime of his career. He lost to a very good opponent in Daniel Cormier, underrated, because you have John Jones looming in the light heavyweight division, and yet you don't focus on who is actually the best fighter in that division currently, and that's Daniel Cormier. Let's hope that fight can happen eventually. But Johnson has expressed his willingness to retire. He doesn't want to be hurt anymore, or rather put his body through the rigors of being a mixed martial arts athlete. And Dana White, the president of the UFC, was supportive of that. He said, anytime the R word comes into your head, this is not for you. And in a sense, you've seen it with Rousey, where she had other plans outside of fighting, which is great, but whether her mind was in the right place to take on Amanda Nunes or Holly Holm, is kind of looking beyond the fight. It's about staying in the present moment. It's almost like mindfulness meditation in a way. It's about staying in the moment, being present. And did this affect Anthony Johnson? It's hard to say. It might not have, like knowing it's your last fight in the octagon. Surely that would bring up a lot of nerves. He certainly fought like a nervous fighter, but every fighter gets nervous. Even Mike Tyson, one of the most fearsome men on the planet, previously said, that's part of the theatre of being a fighter. You're an actor. You pretend you don't have nerves. You hide your nerves. Now, some express it differently. Some like to be open about it. Some like to be closed, and that's up to the individual. But to me, it seemed like Johnson was nervous fighting, and Daniel Cormier knew the occasion, knew what he had to do, and although he was hurt, he got the win.